everybody, and welcome back to the Better Call Sukan podcast with Arif and Carl. Hi all, my name is Arif Daniel, and here is Carl, your host for today. Hi Carl, how are you today?
I'm good. How are you? Fresh?
Fresh, yes, I hope so. Today, because we are gonna speak about the rules and regulation.
We have rules and regulation in the podcast. Oh yeah, correct. We have segment 1, segment 2.
Yes, right. We have our ways lah. The type of like what we're gonna speak about and what is it about. And every week we have different topics.
Yes, correct.
So this week our topic is about media law. Sports law.
Sports and media law.
Sports and media law. Yes. Tak sampai seminit kita dah buat hal. Alright. Sports and media law.
Yes.
I think this is the very first time that personally myself I've never heard like in detail about it. So I am actually really excited because our guest here seems like very knowledgeable about that. Energetic, yes. So I think let's just go straight and introduce who is our guest for today.
Alright, so ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the show. Seemantani, welcome to the show.
Hello.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me.
How are you today?
Very well, thank you.
Okay, so like what we said just now in our introduction, we're going to speak about sports and media law, which I don't think a lot of people know about it. Maybe they know like, in a sport, they need to have a law. And in sport, they have media.
Oh no, like I give you an example, Arif. It's like, for example, broadcasting rights.
Broadcasting rights.
Broadcasting rights. You know, like why certain macam here and there gets it, doesn't get it, and so on and so forth. And you know the valuation.
I see.
Why does the Premier League holds more money compared to the other leagues around the world, and so on and so forth. Benda-benda macam itu. Technical.
Before we go in detail about it, is it just about like every single job scope in the sports category? Is it like included in the sports law conversation?
Right, so that's a very interesting question.
Yeah.
So as lay people, when you talk about sports law, you might be having this impression or idea that there is one single law or one single legislation which includes all the different laws and regulations pertaining to sports law.
Okay.
But in reality, when we are speaking of sports law, it is actually a wide range of laws which are related to sports. So I can at least think of 15 different types of laws that are applicable to the sports industry. And intellectual property is just one of the laws. It could be, doping. It could be defamation. It could be media law. It could be contract law. It could also be corporate mergers and acquisitions. So we are really talking about a very, very large area and large breadth of laws.
It's quite general.
It is general, but it is also very specific in the sense that when we are speaking of sports law, while these are different baskets of laws, these laws are intended to be used in a way which helps the sports industry. And even when, and you would know better than me because you're in the industry, that sports industry itself is not just athletes. There are so many different stakeholders involved.
Yes. Wow.
People behind the camera, people doing audio.
Yes.
A lot of legals.
People listening to this podcast.
Yeah. But before that, let's go to the segment 1 first.
Yeah, we just want to ask you about your personal journey. Like, you share a bit about your journey in the field of sports law and media.
Or how did your first ever sporting interaction?
Yes.
Right. So my professional journey has been quite exciting, but also very different from other lawyers.
Okay.
So I'm actually a lawyer by profession. I completed my Bachelor of Laws from India back in 2013. And after graduating from law school in India, I worked for a year for an IT company which makes software solutions for media companies.
Okay.
So at that point in time, I was quite closely involved in media rights, just understanding how does pay-per-view work, how are rights valued. And our client, I mean the client, actually my company's client, that it was a company known as RSG Media. It was a very niche IT company which was making this rights software to be used by Rogers Canada. So their client was Rogers Canada. So I used to work very closely with Rogers Media Canada, which is one of the largest media companies in Canada.
Okay.
And then they used to send us all these long contracts, which used to have different set of clauses on rights that you cannot play more than 15 minutes on pay-per-view. You cannot play more than 1 hour of the clip on digital platforms. You cannot play more than 2 hours on radio and things like that. There were at least 20,000 contracts. And all of that had to be ingested into the software to make it easier for their employees to understand what were their restrictions and what were their obligations. Because let's just understand that, for a person who is not a lawyer, you cannot read these long documents. These documents, these contracts at the end of the day are only meant for lawyers. So the whole idea was to distill those complex legal terms into a software so that it is easier for the people who are working in that organization, Rogers Media, to understand what their rights are, what their obligations are, and what restrictions do they have, what kind of content they can put on their channel.
The do's and don'ts.
The do's and don'ts, and
Okay.
distilling it in simple terms, and so that they can see it in a software, so that they don't have to go and check with the lawyers all the time. Because for media companies, because the media landscape is so competitive, media companies have to make money, and if they want to cut corners, they would cut corners in cutting out the number of lawyers, because let's just be politically correct, but that's just the reality of things, because a media company thrives on content. So if there is a choice to hire 3 producers versus hiring 1 lawyer, for the senior management, they might see the value in having 3 producers, because producers can churn out content. But lawyers, well, I'm not saying that lawyers are not important, but sometimes media companies might think that it is not so important to have so many lawyers. So just from an efficiency point of view, they wanted to have this software.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that sparked you to be a lawyer?
That didn't spark me to be a lawyer, but that sparked me to specialize in intellectual property. Because IP. So because I was working a lot on copyright, media rights, digital rights. So I worked for a year, and the project was at that point in time, it was an exciting project. I learned a lot about the business side, the business aspects of media industry, but I wasn't learning a lot about the law. And I thought that maybe I should advance my education further.
Okay.
And then I went to the US, to the George Washington University Law School, to pursue my Master of Laws in Intellectual Property.
Oh,
And that was a very good experience for me.
so detailed. Masters of Law in IP.
In IP, yeah.
Yeah, you were saying this
Okay,
now.
look, I was asking. I want to ask this question. So you did a master's. So you had to do your thesis, correct? You had to do a paper on a particular study. Was it regarding to what kind of study?
Right. So I did have to do a paper, but I did not write my paper on media rights. I wrote it on another aspect of intellectual property law.
Okay.
But I did I took a lot of courses which eventually helped me to make my mark in the sports media industry. So I studied a wide range of subjects:
Okay.
patents, digital copyright, trademarks, licensing, international intellectual property law. And so when we think of sports, the sports and intellectual property is very, very closely related, because today you might be seeing that how is IOC making so much money?
International Olympic Committee.
The International Olympic Committee, or any large sports
FIFA.
governing FIFA, or let's even take the example of World Badminton Federation, WBF, which is here in Malaysia itself. It is on their IP, on their intellectual property. So, for example, like the Olympic properties is a basket of patents, designs, logos, the flag, the Olympic flag that they have.
the 5 rings.
The 5 rings.
Yeah.
There is actually an international intellectual property treaty which governs the way how those 5 rings are used. So all of that comes under the ambit of intellectual property and sports.
And it is all being crafted and created by the lawyers, or for all that? Yeah. Who decides all this, actually?
It's a combined decision of lawyers are involved just to help the management to undertake a risk analysis. Like, for example, if there is a media company and they have developed a software for their producers to effectively manage content, the lawyers might be able to advise that, whether the content that they're acquiring, whether it is even worthwhile or not from a legal perspective, because there are a lot of rights issues involved.
Correct.
So that is where the lawyers get involved. I must say that when we are thinking of sports and media, the larger part is actually being done by the content creators and the producers. The role of a lawyer is mainly to highlight the legal risk and the legal challenges. We are not the decision makers. The decision makers are someone else.
Oh, so you're part of that process, just signing up to the conveyor belt.
To make the
Yes.
journey smooth.
To make the journey smooth and to, like, for example, in my day-to-day work, we have a fully functioning sports department.
Okay.
They are negotiating rights
Yeah.
for major sporting events like Olympics. They acquired rights for Olympics, even Asian Games, on behalf of our members. Because the way how rights negotiation happens is that the International Olympic Committee will not waste its time in talking to a broadcaster in a country like Thailand or Timor-Leste, because it's out of their reach, because they are sitting in Switzerland. How will they know what is happening in the market in Thailand or even in Brunei? So then they will appoint an agent. The agent in this case is generally, it used to be Dentsu. Now there is another agent. They're based in Singapore. And then those companies will talk to us, and then we will do the rights negotiation. The sports department handles that. And when they are doing the rights negotiation, they are always sent a contract by Dentsu, the middleman, or by the IOC. It's a very, very comprehensive process. It's just to put it like this, someone can actually just write a thesis on it, because for certain countries, IOC will directly give the rights. For example, for China and India, because these are two very large territories, IOC will directly speak to broadcasters in China and India, because that's big money, because these are such big population. But for smaller countries, they will probably just give the rights to Dentsu, or now there is another middleman, and then those middlemen will come and speak to us. Now you might be wondering that why would the middleman also not want to talk to the broadcasters, because for them also it is a lot of work.
Wow. Yeah. I am just trying to listen and understand. So basically, to the audience out there, to the listeners out there, if you are lost or if you don't understand, take your time, because I'm actually delaying my time to understand what was the conversation just now. But in general, actually, on a whole, what is sports and media law to you? Or is there a specific answer to that?
Yes, sports and media law is actually a very niche category of sports law, where a lawyer is working on media rights. Basically, when we are buying the broadcast rights and then we are basically giving it to our members or selling it to the members.
Yes.
ABU, the organization that I work for, it is a not-for-profit organization. So
Yes.
we are not in the business of selling rights. We only work with our members, and we have a purely non-commercial mandate. We don't make any profit. We are not allowed to do that, and that is not even our goal. But for another commercial organization, they may actually buy the rights at a certain price point, and they may sell it for X amount of money, which may be 10x the amount that they initially paid for. And the lawyers who are working in that sort of deals would be the sports media rights lawyers. So that's one part of it. But there are also lawyers who are exclusively sports lawyers, and they are working on a wide range of issues. And these are lawyers who work for large law firms, and they might be advising even individual athletes.
Yeah. Athletes or the organization
Or
itself.
even the organization itself. Because, even for organizations, So, for example, like you might be aware that Malaysia is the home of two very large federations, the WBF and the AFC.
Okay,
So
yeah.
they do, of course, have their own lawyers, but sometimes the legal issues are very complex. Even the in-house lawyers are not able to deal with it, simply because maybe they don't have the expertise, or they just don't have the time because they are involved in some other work. So the lawyers itself will seek the advice of the law firm.
Actually, I have there's a question from social media that I've received this morning from Izaham. Actually, he was asking why, in terms of broadcasting rights, why is there is there a stumbling block when you're negotiating between other member countries, like for example Malaysia and Singapore, for example? Is there like a conflict of like broadcasting rights apa benda?
Yeah, there are conflicts in the sense that price is of course always the main sticking point, because
Currency price.
the currency price and the price that we can get from Malaysia, not we as in any media organization can get from Malaysia, will be very different from the price that any media organization can get from Singapore, because the way how the valuation of rights works is on the basis of the GDP.
Okay.
We might want to think that it works on the basis of the population, and you might think that a country like India or China, the valuation of the rights would be very high. And that is true, but these are two exceptional countries because the population is really very, very big. But between countries in ASEAN,
Is there any
Singapore would obviously be paying much more for rights simply because the world knows that they have money.
Yeah.
Faham?
Just because the GDP is very high.
So, did that answer the question?
Yeah, it does.
I just want to ask, okay, we already know what is sports and media law in general. Like, she has explained to it. I just want to ask, like you said just now, the evolution of it. So, like, why is it that it is needed to have the expertise outside of a certain organization? Why don't they have their own sports and media lawyer, actually?
Right. So I think for many organizations, they may not be having the expertise of a media rights lawyer simply because they may not be in the business of acquiring and selling rights.
Okay.
Like, for example, AFC has many good lawyers, but they may not necessarily need a media rights lawyer because they are not a broadcaster.
Fair.
Yeah, but for a broadcaster, it is very important to have someone who understands media rights, who understands those contracts, who understands the key terms. And it is also important for lawyers to understand the commercial terms, because if you don't understand the commercial terms, there is no way that we can draft good contracts. There is no way that we can look at the contracts with that lens. Like, for example, I know that our members, they need the contract to be signed by a certain date because they are hungry for sponsorship revenue. So if they are paying a certain fees, it is on the commitment that they will be able to get certain money from their sponsors. But if we don't sign the agreement by a certain date, then we are losing and even they are losing. And at the end of the day, if we lose, they also lose, and it's vice versa.
Okay, there's a question again from social media. My friend Faiz, he has asked this. We had this conversation before in the past, and also he did ask this on the social media IG story. Thanks for asking a question. What's the most lopsided deal that you have ever seen?
I think the
If you can.
I think the most lopsided deal I have seen for the Indian Premier League.
Okay.
In India, the rights have gone to Sony, and it has gone for, I think, if I'm not mistaken, $20,000 billion. And to me, coming from a country like India, I understand that cricket is
number one,
and people worship cricketers like anything in India. But India is also a very poor country. I just feel that spending that amount of money on broadcast rights is perhaps not a very good use of resources.
20 million, 20 billion, sorry.
$10,000 billion. And I'm not going to name who is
okay, no need to.
Yeah, it's one of the largest corporate houses in India.
Wow.
Yeah,
it's quite
so
lopsided.
and for a developing country like India, it's just a very big amount of money.
Okay, hopefully that answers your question, Faiz.
And I mean, you see these kind of media rights deals happening all the time in India.
Okay. If, like, the sports in general and the law in the general, how has it evolved till today?
Right, that's a very good question. So, no, I mean, it's very good that you're asking that question because...
Good student. Okay, continue.
Initially, when, back in the days, maybe let's say talk about 1970s or 1980s, the laws which were applicable to the sports industry were very narrow, in the sense that these are the typical laws that you would see, civil laws and criminal laws and defamation laws.
Yeah.
There are no very niche or specified categories of laws.
It's very vague, is it?
It's very vague and it's very general. Like, for example, it's applicable to all the industries. It is something which
Not
is
specific.
not specific to
okay.
the sports industry. But now that the industry has evolved so much, and now that esports is such a big thing, there are actually countries which have a specialized esports law. Like South Korea is one of, if I'm not mistaken, it's one of the first countries in the world to have a dedicated esports law. They have a regulatory body, which is, I think, known as the South Korea Esports Association, which actually regulates esports players. So, for example, if someone wants to become an esports player in Korea, they would have to take a permission of sports from this regulatory body. And the need for, and this is a statutory created regulatory body, in the sense that the law says that, this, it has the backing of the law. It has the backing of the legislature. So it is not that this body has come up on its own.
Okay.
Ooh.
So that is one interesting thing. And
That
now
is
even in
evolved.
India, there is a discussion on having a law to regulate esports players. Because what is happening is that, and I'm very sorry if I'm speaking too much about India, it's just that I know that market very well because I was born and raised there. Because it is such a large country, and unemployment is a big thing, and a lot of young people think that they can make a quick buck from esports.
Okay.
But what is happening is that a lot of young people are getting swayed away. They're dropping out of school, or they are into some sort of illegal activities. Maybe they're borrowing too much money, or maybe they're involved in gambling. And they're looking at esports, because esports also has different things, right? There are some very legalized sports like football, like soccer, badminton, and things like that. But the dark side of it is also gambling. So a lot of minors, or young adults below the age of 20, are getting sort of addicted to esports. So now a lot of bodies are saying that we need to have a legislation where there is some governance mechanism on the esports companies, so that they are not just able to ask, so that it becomes difficult for children to sign up to these platforms. Because what is happening is that, sometimes parents don't even know that the children are on these platforms.
Yes.
And they have become addicts. And, we would think that maybe this is a Western problem, but actually this is not just a Western problem. This is happening even
It's
in
a social problem.
Yeah, it is a social problem. And young people not going to school, or not like playing active sports. Young people should be playing real sports, not like being sitting in front of the computer and, doing esports 24/7. So that's becoming a problem.
So is India taking I'm not saying taking the lead, meaning South Korea is taking the lead. So is India following what South Korea is doing, or is it through like some mix and match with other
I think
countries?
it's through some mix and match, because what might work in South Korea may not necessarily work in India, because it's at a very different levels of development.
Correct.
Even though this esports industry itself is quite big in India, they will have, I think they will try to adopt some things from the esports thing, but the main concern of the Indian government is more on the parental involvement, which I think is not the case in South Korea. But because this is becoming a huge thing in India, parental control will be more important.
There's been, the question was like how it's developed, how law in sports has developed to today. So that is actually evolution of the law. It has, so esport is one of it that you are actually giving an example, right? So thank you for that. So now my next question is, do you need to be required to be a sports and media lawyer, or specifically, or you're a sports lawyer, you can be a sports and media lawyer actually?
Right. That's an interesting question.
Oh, so interesting question.
So you, of course, need to be a lawyer, in the sense that if you want to practice law, you will do a Bachelor of Laws. It is not always necessary to have a specialized degree.
Okay.
I know people who have been practicing sports law simply because maybe they were lucky that right out of law school they were very focused. They knew that they wanted to work in the sports industry, and they started working. And over the years, they gained so much of experience that they never had to get a specialized degree. But the people, and this has been my personal observation in the industry, that the people who are very successful, even as sports lawyers, are not people who have a master of laws, or a master of laws and intellectual property, but are people who have studied sports, like people who are doing an MBA in sports sports management or something like that. And when you do, and I think there are some universities in Europe which have a combination of management and sports law. So the degree that you get is something like sports law and management, something like that. Or sports law and governance. So it has to be a bit interdisciplinary. I mean, the main point that I'm trying to make is that just by having a very good knowledge of the law is not going to take you very far.
Okay.
Even as a sports media rights lawyer, then having a very good understanding of the industry. And you can get a good understanding of the industry either by working in the industry or just working or getting a generalized sports degree.
Like you said, like after any typical lawyers after law school, they are lucky to just know what they want to do is sports. How did you in the end went into the industry?
Yeah, so for me, it was not planned. And that's why at the starting when I said that it has been exciting, but it has also been different because when I graduated from law school back in India, the typical path of a lawyer would be to work in a lawyer's chambers or to work with a law firm.
Yes.
They would not work with a company because if you're working in a company, you are not getting very good legal exposure.
Yes.
But I was, by that point in time, quite set on not working for a law firm or with a lawyer's chambers because during my final year of law school, I worked with a lawyer and I also worked with a law firm. So the final year of law school in India, we basically don't go to law school. We are essentially working.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so by that time, I was quite set in my mind that, this whole legal working in a law firm doesn't work for me. Working with a senior advocate also doesn't work for me. And so I was lucky to land up with this job and the pay was okay. So I just took up that job and I just learned on the job. It was just meant to be.
You had any interest in sports before that, actually? Do you had any interest?
Yeah, I do like sports.
Do you play sports?
Yeah, I used to play basketball during my young days. I also used to play, in India we have some localized sports.
Okay.
I don't know if you know about Kho-Kho and Kabaddi. So I
know.
Oh, you know Kabaddi? Okay. Yeah, so I used to play Kabaddi, but that was when I was, I think, 10 or 12 years old.
Okay.
And then as I grew older in my early 20s, I used to play chess. I know we can't call chess as sports, but...
we do.
We had a
chess master.
Really?
As our guest.
Okay.
Kita betul-betul like, no. Yeah, continue, sorry.
Yeah, so I used to play chess. But cricket has been, I think there is no Indian who doesn't like cricket or who is not involved in cricket because our pastime is playing cricket, in India, back in the days, the form of entertainment is cricket. When holidays come, what do? You play cricket. So, there girls and boys both play cricket. I used to play cricket with my brothers. So
nice. Okay, speaking of cricket, how competitive is the media rights for cricket in India, Pakistan, Bangladesh?
It is extremely competitive to the extent that we are nowhere in the scene. In the sense, my organization, we are nowhere involved in it because it's like a monopoly. There's So there is this particular media organization, broadcaster in India, known as it's held by Reliance, the richest man in Asia. And actually now he's Mukesh Ambani. There was a large-scale wedding in India. I don't know if it made headlines. Okay. So they actually hold the rights for South Asia.
Oh, okay.
And the valuation of the rights is around $10,000 billion, something like that. So, because ABU is a very small, not-for-profit organization, we are just nowhere in the league.
Understood.
And the rights always go to them. It's a well-known fact for entire South Asia.
Okay, just a quick one because I want to talk about how do you guys, like just now we talk about esports and also talking about broadcasting rights. How does the translation from broadcasting rights of a certain league, like let's just say the Indian Cricket League, for example, into video games.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
How does that translate? Is it a one-to-one translation, or is it like you have to renegotiate with like the video game partners, or?
I think we have to renegotiate because the agreements that come to us are very standardized agreements. And I think in that sense, the sports federations and the leagues are very smart. They want to reserve the large scale, or let me put it like this, they know that the rights which will make the maximum amount of money, they will keep it with them, and then they will negotiate with the video game companies or even with the publishers. Those rights would typically not come to us. We will only get the broadcasting rights because our mandate, and our members are broadcasters, and that's where our mandate ends. Now, if our members somehow they want to monetize their clip and they want to negotiate with a video game publisher or with the video game company, it's really their business. We are nowhere involved.
Understood. Because the reason I asked that question, because there was a case a few years ago with Zlatan Ibrahimovic, Gareth Bale, the footballers. They were like saying like they were saying like to FIFA, the EA Sports.
Yeah.
Like who gave you the rights to put my name and my face on the video game?
Right.
Yeah. So hence that's why I asked that question.
Okay. So that part that you're saying, it's another part of intellectual property rights. It's known as image rights.
Yes.
So that's a very important area of law as well.
So I mean, with regards to image rights, sorry Arif, with regards to image rights, how important it is for like athletes, organizations to like hold those image rights?
They are very important. I think they are
key.
They are the key, and it is the biggest form of revenue for athletes. And the bigger the athlete is in terms of his reputation, in terms of his skill, the bigger will be the commercial value of his image rights. So you see, I mean, you all know that there is something known as the right of privacy.
Yes.
So because we are normal people, we have a right of privacy. If there is a big celebrity, he would have image rights or publicity rights.
Correct.
Because he can then go on suing anyone who uses his name, image, or likeness. But we as normal people, even though we have a right of privacy, our rights will not be taken that seriously, if you understand what I'm saying.
Yeah, I do.
So eventually what I'm trying to say is that from a legal perspective, image rights is actually just a subset of the right of privacy, because just the way a normal human being has a right to privacy, even a celebrity has a right to privacy. But why is it that his right to privacy has been elevated to the level of image rights or publicity rights or even celebrity rights simply because of his celebrity stature?
Understood. We should have image rights. Anyway.
No, you could have celebrity rights.
Yeah. There you go. One more question for me.
Okay.
You did mention that you dealt with intellectual properties. How I don't know if you have experienced this, but have you butted heads with like people from marketing regarding certain like campaigns or whatever?
Yes, I have.
Okay.
Yeah, because this specifically happens during Olympics. So if our members, who are actually broadcasters, if they want to use certain marketing and promotional materials, they have to seek IOC's permission. They just cannot put out anything on their social media or even on their on their channel or even on their radio station. So we are the intermediary. They will give us what their promotional materials look like, and then we will forward it to IOC, and then IOC will approve it.
And also, like, last from me before I go to you, Arif, what's the speed? Because like I remember, because I've been in Malaysian sports for the last 10 years. How do you find efficiency? Because I have actually spoken to people, some in the industry or somewhere too, and so on and so forth. Like the speed of like decision making, usually, because like from certain section that I know, they get frustrated for not getting the decision on time, and so on and so forth. So the speed of it. So what's usually the typical?
For local.
Huh?
For local? Or
No, everywhere around the world.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I will only speak about the large events like Olympics and Asian Games and Commonwealth Games.
Yeah.
I think these larger sports federations understand that they cannot cater to
everything,
and that efficiency is really a problem. So that's the reason why they sublicense the rights to an agency. That's the role of Denso. That's where Denso comes into the picture. And now there is another, I'm forgetting the name, it's Infront. Yeah, Infront Singapore.
Okay.
So now Infront holds the rights for Olympics for a lot of countries, and majorly for all the Asian countries. So now if a Malaysian broadcaster wants to get rights for the next Olympics,
yes.
they are not going to IOC to talk. They are going to talk to Infront.
Or the middle person.
The middle person.
Okay.
And that's the reason why IOC is doing it, because they don't have, they have, their main goal is to promote Olympics. They cannot be involved in the day-to-day work. They would be involved, but it's also a lot of work for them. And that's the reason why they sub-license and they appoint a marketing agency. And the middleman, the agents are fairly quick. But even sometimes when they have to coordinate with IOC, I must say that it can take a lot of time, because this time we signed the rights for Olympics at the last minute. And that was because we were negotiating with the Dentsu. And for every single thing, we had to go back to the middleman. And the middleman would say that, no, we have to talk to IOC. And then it was IOC
So
which was
just
coming back, and they were taking a lot of time simply because they are dealing with so many countries.
Understood. Okay, I'm not asking because this is a real life experience I've experienced through friends and so on and so forth. And guys, it's not like a legal advice or whatever. It's just like giving a bit of a simulation. Let's just say that I'm a small time business owner that I want to broadcast the Olympics. Okay, obviously I can't do it because it's a public space and so on and so forth, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, so I want to broadcast it and like correlate it with like community events, whatever. So how do I able to get that rights to produce? Obviously I do have to pay because it's in the public space, all right? But what are the steps for me in order to acquire that so that I can feed that Olympic event broadcasting to my small community event?
Do you get the question?
Because like I do have friends who wants to broadcast like the Olympics at their stores, for example.
Right. I think the only way they can do it is if they can get some copyright-free clips.
Okay. No, I mean live broadcast.
Live broadcast.
Yeah.
Is it hard?
Is
Is
it
it possible?
It is actually
possible.
Yeah, so,
It would typically not be possible
Not
because
sorry, guys. You know who you are.
It would not be possible, and you should not even try to do it because for the first time and for the live event, it would typically be going on live on a broadcasting terrestrial broadcasting, and if you try to steal the signal, it's going to be a big problem. In the sense, it's a criminal offense. You can't do it. So people should be very careful about that.
Yes. Now, speaking of that, let's go. I just want to ask, is there any high profile of like criminal offense of like you said just now in the starting of show, like doping or any athlete issues or what that has evolved the whole perception of thinking in sports and media law?
Right.
That you can share that maybe like I don't know, or maybe Carl knows. I don't know. But yeah, like that has evolved in like a highlight of like for sports. Yeah. Is there any?
Yeah, there are. I mean, there are a lot of cases. So not necessarily related to sports and media law, but just related to sports law. So for example, in India, there was a very well-respected athlete.
Yes.
2-time winner of Commonwealth Games, Golden Commonwealth Games.
Okay.
Sprinter. He was, I think this was for the 2014 Asian Games. And he was nearly selected, and then he was having his tests, and it was found that he was... I mean, there were anti-doping charges.
Yes, okay.
But at that point in time, under the law, he could not have been banned because he was very close to being... He was very close to fly for the games.
Okay.
And then the Indian government had to issue a decree to make sure that he's banned. And after that, the law was amended. So at that point in time, under the Indian legislation, if an athlete is found to be doping, at the last minute, there is nothing in place.
Okay.
Because he has already been given the approval.
Okay.
And this was at the very, very last minute. But through a presidential decree, the player was banned and he was not able to go. So that's the way how the law evolved, at least in India. And then in the US, there have been cases where... the NCAA, which is the National College, the Basketball Association.
Or NCAA, okay.
The NCAA.
Okay.
So they have their own athletes, their own basketball players. And when they are negotiating with the broadcasters, there was once a case where they did not give the permission to the broadcaster to use the name, image, and likeness of their players, which are actually students.
Oh.
And then what the broadcaster did was that they of course, they broadcasted the games, that was fine. But then they also used certain clips, and they also used the name, image, and likeness to make programs.
Oh.
So, but the deal itself, contract
No
from
consent, is it?
and there was no consent. So
Yeah.
then that is when, that is where the importance of media rights lawyers comes into the picture, because the contract was only for broadcasting rights, that you do a live transmission.
Yeah.
There was nothing about programs. But what the broadcaster did was, and that was a mistake of the broadcaster, that they did not understand that they don't have the right to make program using the name and image, and likeness of the athletes. So that was a problem, and the broadcaster had to pay huge penalties to NCAA.
But it was before all the legal rights were formed. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the whole point is that here the law itself did not evolve,
Yeah.
but it emphasizes the importance of having a good lawyer. At least for broadcasters who are involved in high-stake deals, they definitely need to have good lawyers or who understand.
yeah.
Even if they're not lawyers, like I know that in many broadcasting organizations who are working on broadcast rights, they are actually content people, people who understand content acquisition and who have been in the industry for such a long period of time that they understand the contracts very well. So that can also work very well. You don't necessarily have to be a lawyer, but you need to understand how the industry works.
Understood.
Now, actually, just a question. Just now, she has mentioned that she did her studies. You did your studies in IP.
Yeah, intellectual property.
What is actually intellectual property? Like in general term.
Right. So think of intellectual property. So I'll make a comparison with
Because in my
physical
head,
property.
Property is like the house.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we have physical property,
Yeah.
and then we have intellectual property. Physical property is something which we see, like house,
Okay.
cars,
Yeah.
jewelry, money. The studio is a physical property. And
Yes.
intellectual property is anything which is an output of our mind, which is an output of our intellect. So it could be anything that I invent, which
Okay.
you invent. This anything that you are an author. You told me at the starting of the program, so that the book that you wrote is your intellectual property because it has come from your mind. It could be so copyright, patents, and trademarks. So initially, when this whole concept of intellectual property was being thought about, it actually came from the West. It is not a uniquely Asian concept.
Okay.
Because in Asia, knowledge was meant to be freely shared. People would share ideas. So I will give you the example of Mahatma Gandhi.
Okay.
Mahatma Gandhi used to write, and yesterday was Mahatma Gandhi's birthday actually.
Oh,
Point of recording.
Yeah, Mahatma Gandhi used to write many books,
Yes.
and then a publisher in the UK approached him saying that can we we need rights for your books. And then he said that what is the question of rights? If you want to publish my books in the UK,
Yeah.
you can do it. Because in our system, in our culture, knowledge is meant to be freely shared. I'm not going to make money out of it. But then the whole thing about intellectual property came from the West, especially during the Industrial Revolution, from Britain when steam engine started and things like that. And then this concept of industrial property came. So patents and trademarks became very important, and that became industrial property. So now
Okay.
even large corporates, the brands and the logos that they have is another form of intellectual property. And of course, you might want to question that why is it being called intellectual property? It is just a property, but it's a property that we don't see. That's the reason why it is called intellectual property. It is something intangible that you don't see. It is a goodwill of that company. Like today, why is it that some people prefer to buy a Nike shoe versus any locally branded shoe, even though the shoe might be produced from the same factory? It's simply because as consumers, we have a certain trust in that brand due to its goodwill.
Understood.
Okay, now this is a question about in media. Imagine the show, or any other media for regarding of sports. How do they protect themselves, and what is in the future if anyone wants, any broadcasters out there, they want to start up something new,
Live streaming
or
of a social
anything
league, for example.
yeah, or maybe even us want to talk something like that. What is the steps that needs to be taken at first, and what can they do or we do to actually protect ourselves?
Right.
Yeah.
I think the first important thing is that which people in general need to understand, which people in the media industry need to understand, which content creators need to understand, which producers need to understand, is that there is no need to file for copyright protection. So, for example, if you have written a book, you are an author of that book the minute you publish that book or the minute you write that book. You don't need to file for copyright registration, in the sense that you don't necessarily have to go to the Malaysian Intellectual Property Office and file for copyright. Even though you may want to do it. And the only reason why you may want to do it, because maybe in future you want to license your book maybe to a big producer, and you tell that producer, hey, make a movie out of my book, or to a director or to a scriptwriter. So ultimately it all boils down to monetization. So for live streaming, the only thing that is really required is to have good branding, like to spend money on trademarks and logos. And for local audiences, the Malaysian Intellectual Property Office is now they are in PJ, and they have a proper trademark filing system. They can file for trademarks. They don't necessarily have to hire a lawyer. If they have the capacity, they can hire a lawyer, but the form filling is pretty straightforward, and they can do it themselves. So that's the singularly most important thing. And what people in the industry need to understand is that even though they may protect something, in the sense they might file for copyright protection, there is no guarantee that no one will pirate your live stream, because enforcement is a side game altogether.
Okay.
Okay, so I think from the start to the end, we understand that it is very important, and it's everything you at least need to know. You don't have to know in detail, in depth. We have expertise here, but in order for you to to understand, at least understand it, or know in the surface of it, in order for you to
the guidelines.
Yeah. So, is there anything that you want to add regarding on this topic?
Yeah, I think I just want to add that, many young people and people in general, they are very keen to make their career in the sports industry.
Yeah.
Perhaps some people want to become athletes. Some people want to become sports people. When I was young, I had many friends who wanted to become cricketers.
Yeah.
But we must understand that it will be great if you can become an athlete. But sometimes if you're not able to realize your dreams, there are other avenues where you can realize your dream. And if you're very keen to make your career in sports, becoming a sports lawyer or becoming even a sports media lawyer could be a very lucrative career option, because you get to meet a lot of people from the industry, and you don't know what sort of connections you may end up making. Like, I can tell you that just because I work now in sports and media, I know some of the top leagues and some of the top people who sit there simply because I'm working with them. I never thought that this would be possible. But for people who are very keen to make their career as athletes, that could be an option. And you never know that maybe with the sort of connections you make, you may have your head start in your career.
Fair?
Yeah, because we don't know actually
Where life takes.
Yeah, and that's the beauty of this podcast actually, because we don't just have athletes on the show. We have anyone or anything that's related to sports in general, and we make. Even myself, I realized that it's a very huge industry that you can just. If you want to be a part of it, you can in any way. You don't have to be fully fit. You don't have to be. There's a lot of options, and one of the options is being a sports and media law, or just sports lawyer, or even understand about sports law in general. Then you can actually not, if you don't do it or for your career, you can actually guide, help people understand, maybe give reference. So thank you so much. Also, like the question, I have one more last one, like to the people out there that you have told that if they are into sports, but if anyone out there, young men, young women, young kids, or they just they don't know what to do. Yeah, but they want to do something, because you said they just play games and all. So how can you tell them? How do you advise even to the parents, or like what can they motivate themselves in order for them to continue doing, to be a better person?
Right. Okay, that's a very good question. I think
good question.
parents have a very important role to play. I remember that during my childhood, my mother really used to push me into playing sports and being into extracurricular activities. And I think parents really do have that sort of a responsibility. We cannot just blame young children because, now technology is just so pervasive. You cannot escape it.
Yes.
I was in India, and at that point in time, mobile phones was really not a thing.
Okay.
So we had no option but to be involved in sports
Activities.
or extracurricular activities, just stepping out of the home. But for people these days, for young people these days, when everyone has a device, there are 3, 4 devices, it's very difficult to escape it. So if parents can exert some parental control, I think that would be very beneficial for the young
Discipline.
people. Very disciplined, yeah.
Right, Carl, you want to add anything?
Okay, all good. I'm cleared. I think some of you guys have asked me some questions. Sorry guys kalau some questions the answers tak dapat. I think it's good advice lah.
All right, do you want to add anything before we go to the final segment?
Nothing. I would just encourage the viewers, the audience, that take life as it comes. And sports is something which unites people. It is full of fun, and make the best use of it. Be in nature, play some sport. It doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be very good at it, but just explore all sports if possible, or at least 2 or 3 sports. It really does uplift your mood.
Awesome.
Nice.
All right, with that, thank you so much. We will go to the final segment, which is we're going to ask you, is there any club or sports club that you support? Yeah, I assume cricket, I guess. So what's the favorite team actually?
So it is actually the Bengal Tigers.
Bengal Tigers.
Yeah, it is a team of the Indian Premier League, so I support the Indian Premier League.
Oh,
it's not that I support the Indian Premier League, it's just that if you're from India and if you are into cricket, you can't help but like the Indian Premier League, and then I like the Bengal Tigers.
I have a question, just a follow-up question. How many teams are there in the Indian cricket league?
I think there are at least 25 to 26, and each are their
nationally.
team. Yeah, nationally. And
Okay, fair. I never knew that.
Do you have any favorite athlete? Your personal favorite athlete? Doesn't have to be in that specific sport.
Right. My favorite athlete is actually now deceased. It's the deceased sprinter known as Mr. Milkha Singh, also known as the Flying Sikh.
Okay.
He
Oh,
is
okay.
the only athlete to have won gold medal in Asian Games and Commonwealth Games for sprinting.
Okay.
And his life story is very inspirational because he came from a very, very poor family.
Okay.
And there's actually a very famous Bollywood movie made on it.
Oh.
Yeah.
What's the name of the movie?
It's called Bhag Milkha because Bhag in Hindi means run. And the way how he used to train himself, and he didn't even have he couldn't even afford to buy shoes.
Okay.
And when he used to run, his feet used to bleed.
What is his name again?
Milkha Singh.
Milkha Singh.
Yeah, Milkha, Milkha Singh.
Okay, which leads me to the follow-up question. Favorite sporting movie of all time?
Sporting movie. Actually, this movie itself, it's a very emotionally drawn movie because I think it has also got to do with the fact that it's a Bollywood movie, and Bollywood movies tend to be a little bit over the top.
Okay.
And it is quite possible that his life story was not so over the top, but the way how it is being made is being shown as if, he
Very
led
inspirational.
Yeah, like a person who led a life of struggle and who was so passionate about the sport, like about running actually.
Okay. And follow-up.
And who made a mark.
Sorry?
And who made a mark, like, he won 2 gold medals in Commonwealth Games, in Asian Games for 400 meters in sprinting, which was very rare back in the days.
All right. And also, he never qualified to the Olympics?
I'm not sure about
Sure,
that.
okay.
He could have retired or something.
Okay. Okay, so the next question is, because we're Better Call Sukan, we want to give all sports a chance. So the 2 questions from me is, number 1 is, in the future, who do you want us to interview to come on the show? 1. And number 2 is there a sports that you want us to call that you really want to learn?
A sport that you want to learn and also the first question is what topic? Yeah. It doesn't matter if you don't have a specific person, just what topic
Right.
regarding to sports lah.
Right. So I, of course, don't have a specific person, but I think I would personally like to learn a lot about golf.
Oh, yes.
Because
Tak ada golf lagi
Not yet.
Yeah.
I've noticed one thing in Malaysia, a lot of people play golf.
Yeah.
and that's a good thing. But I would really like to understand the back-end operations. Like how does it work, in the sense that
fair.
how do golf clubs make money? How do the rights issues work? How do the players make money? So that's one part of it. And personally, I would also like to learn the sport, but that I can't do by being on the channel. But what I like about golf is that, to me, it seems that it requires a lot of, focus and mental stamina. So that's what I really like about the sport, even though I've never played golf in my life. But when I see people playing golf, it looks very nice to me.
Yeah, I have to. You hopped on something quite intriguing, because like, how do they make money? Because they have a huge land.
Oh yeah.
So like, it's a good.
They have a
business.
huge land, and I don't know if you know this or not, but now in Singapore, they're going to shut down the golf clubs because Singapore has dearth of land.
Yes.
So I was just wondering, and I was asking my friend that where are Singaporeans going to play golf? And then someone said, no, Singaporeans don't play golf anywhere. That's the forte of Malaysians.
Yeah. The final question is any quotes or saying that you personally keep that keeps you going?
Right. So I believe in this quote that the sun, the moon, and the truth can't be hidden.
The sun,
The sun,
the moon,
the
bulan,
moon,
and
the truth
cannot be hidden.
cannot be hidden. It is not my quote. It is
or that you like to keep, that you always want to say to yourself, is it?
Yeah, it's something which I really, hold in my heart. It keeps me going.
Nice.
What does that mean actually?
The truth will never be hidden.
That one I know. You say truth,
always be
you
there.
cannot lie, right? Yeah. But sun and moon, what does that?
So this quote is attributed to Siddhartha Gautam, Buddha.
Okay.
And what he was trying to say is that, no matter, even if you're running away from reality, you cannot run away from reality. Like the way the sun will come out every day, the way the moon comes out every day, the truth will also come out every day.
Whoa.
And I think it is a very philosophical quote, because what it really means is that deep down, spiritually, we are all the same. You cannot run away from that reality. I think that was the real philosophical meaning of that quote.
Nice.
Yay. Wacana
Enjoy that.
Sukan, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, before that, we would like you to give a special shout out to whoever who has made you who you are today, and also if anyone has any questions or follow up, or if they want to reach out to you, how do they reach out? Yeah.
Right. Thank you so much for listening to this podcast, and I would like to thank my family and friends and all my colleagues in ABU for helping me shape my career as a sports media professional. If you want to reach out to me, you can reach out to me on my LinkedIn. My LinkedIn profile is www.linkedin.com/Seemantani Sharma. I can provide the link to you later. Or you can reach out to me on my email address, which is Seemantani, SEEMANTANI @abu.org.my. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Awesome. With that, any final thoughts before we end the show?
No, I would like to express my gratitude to both of you for inviting me to this show and to your entire team. I know there are a lot of people who are working on this.
Yes.
There's a lot of back end work that goes. People who are shooting, the editors. So I would like to say thank you to everyone. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Carl, you got any final thoughts?
Take it so, Marif.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Thank you so much for being here to share from not just the law, how it all started, and then the evolution, and then how is it today. So
defining the terms.
Yeah, but in a surface where everyone can just understand, and at least they got to know about it. So with that, I thank you so much. To everyone, to all listeners, thank you also for listening from the start to the end, or watching from the start to the end. Don't forget to if you want got any questions, if you want to follow up, we will just say the details bawah sini. Yes, and if you have any questions or any sports, any issues that you want us to call, do let us know, and we will definitely call them. I guess that's it. Let's go wrap up the show. My name is Zarif Daniel.
My name is Carl.
I'm Seemantani.
And we will see you soon. Bye-bye.
Audio Plus.